Hello and welcome to this episode of the Her Success podcast. We interview highly successful and aspirational women in the engineering, technology, and life science world with the view of inspiring the next generation of leaders within that space. This is brought to you by Engtal and Biotal, two recruitment firms that cater to the engineering and life sciences world. If you're a professional looking for a job in this space, or you're a company looking to hire talent in this area, please get in contact. Today, I'm joined by Katelyn Arnold. Katelyn is a principal scientist at Glycan Therapeutics. She has a PhD in pharmaceutical sciences from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and she's also a Forbes 30 under 30 winner. She is an all-round winner. This is a fantastic episode. We cover a lot of really important and exciting topics. So I'm going to get to the show now. I hope you guys enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Her Success podcast. I'm delighted to be joined today by Katelyn Arnold. Katelyn is a principal scientist at Glycan Therapeutics. She has a PhD in pharmaceutical sciences from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and really exciting as she is a Forbes 30 under 30. So absolutely pumped to have a chat with Katelyn and a little bit more about her journey. So firstly, Katelyn, thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris, for that introduction. That was amazing. I'm very excited to have a discussion with you today.
Love it. So first things first, I always start just getting a bit of an overview of your journey. So obviously you're a scientist at the moment. Tell me a little bit about what inspired you to enter the life science world and what your career has looked like so far.
Yeah, I've always been interested in science. Both of my parents were in the science and healthcare fields, but actually I was determined to be a professional ballerina until about age 20. When I got injured. At that point, I had already started my undergraduate degree. And so I decided, well, maybe I'll try my fallback plan in science and see how that goes. And I found that once I devoted all of my energy and focus from dance onto now my academic studies in science, that I really was taken with the thought of discovery and how what can be determined in a lab could affect a patient, and how the medicines we take today, most of them, almost all of them, stem from research happening in academic labs originally. So during my undergraduate degree at University of Dayton, I did research a summer, my last summer when I was going into my senior year. And that's when I really found that pursuing a PhD would be the next logical step for myself. I originally saw myself going into the pharmaceutical industry and working in drug discovery and development. But when I got to UNC and started my PhD program here, I really learned that if I were to go to big pharma, I maybe would not have the same type of ownership of my ideas and the work that I was doing as if I were to either stay in academia or work for a small biotech company. And so the lab that I joined at the University of North Carolina was a Dr. Jan Liu's lab where we study glycobiology. And he had recently spun out a company called Glycan Therapeutics at that time. So I was not involved in Glycan Therapeutics during my PhD, but I knew that there was a small biotech awaiting if I would choose to pursue that route after my PhD. I had an amazing PhD experience, which I am really fortunate to be able to say that because I know that is not the case for people who are pursuing their PhD, but I just loved my time as a PhD student. I was able to travel the world. I was able to go to China and Singapore, Hong Kong, all places in Europe, presenting my work, meeting people from all over the world. And each of those experiences just further grew my love for discovery and for drug development. It was also during my time during my PhD when I made some very fundamental discoveries of compounds that we had synthesized in our lab that are synthetic sugars. And I determined their mechanism of action in mice and found one was a very potent anti-inflammatory compound, and another compound that we synthesized has a very potent anti-thromboinflammatory, where it has both anticoagulant, a blood thinning property, as well as anti-inflammatory. And so these molecules that we synthesize, these synthetic sugars, are very effective in our animal models that involve acute care and critical care conditions. So we filed some patents that I'm an inventor on, along with my PI and our collaborators during my graduate studies. And towards the end of my graduate work, I was really starting to think about my next steps and where I wanted to go. And I realized that what I was working on has the potential to really help someone who's suffering from acute liver injury, someone that's suffering from some type of liver ischemia and inflammation. And I thought, I should do this. I should continue to develop this work. The traditional PhD route is you do your PhD work, and then you either go and become a postdoctoral fellow in a lab that does something kind of similar, but separate, so that you can broaden your skill set. And then you become a professor after that. Or after you get your PhD, typically you would go into industry and work in a lab in a pharmaceutical company or in a tech company and work on the projects that they assign you. And so I thought, I want to stay and I want to continue doing this work because I think it really has some legs and there's somewhere that I can really take this. And if I can help just one person, and a patient, then I should do this. So with the mentorship I had from my PI, Dr. Liu, he really encouraged me to take any type of opportunities that came at hand and really pursue this as well. So I did a very small postdoc here, about 9 months, and then I was promoted to assistant professor. And then at that point, when I was assistant professor, then I became joint with Glycan Therapeutics in addition to being faculty at the University of North Carolina. Yeah, so I think that pretty much sums up how I got here today and the discoveries I made during my PhD, and I'm really just continuing working on those now.
Nice. You touched on this a little bit, but that was going to be one of my questions, is why you made the decision to go into sort of a smaller biotech world rather than joining the Pfizers or J&Js of the world. Talk me through a little bit about your thought process. I know a lot of our listeners are in the scientific world, and maybe a couple of them are facing a similar dilemma. But what do you think the advantages are to joining an organization that's maybe a bit smaller?
Yeah, I think that there's a real power to having ownership and autonomy for the work that you're doing. It kind of is a double-edged sword, but I really understand all aspects of the work I'm doing. I mean, I wrote an entire dissertation on it. So I really feel that when I go and I talk to people, not just scientists, but anyone who I'm able to talk to about my work to, I have a different level, I feel, of commitment and awareness of the work, that everything I've done and where it is I want to go in the future as well. And I feel I can see that quite clearly. Of course, I'm very open to hearing people's feedback and how I can get there faster and different routes to go. But I think that's a key difference. Of course, there's resources are different. Small biotechs, of course, they have less resources than a large pharma company or large biotech company. But there's a real sense of reward when you're able to secure that funding or secure that grant money that you worked really hard to apply for and you worked really hard to get, and then using that to purchase the next piece of equipment or hire someone. And it's a sense that is unlike anything else I can really explain. And I hope I can keep going as long as I can like this. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it. I worked for one very large company and then started my own organization. And I know first-hand experience, being so close to the business, seeing it grow. Like you get a level of gratification from doing that that I don't think you'll ever get working for a larger organization. You were last year named as one of the Forbes 30 under 30, which is a super elite list. So huge congrats on that. To tell me a little bit around that, what work did you do to achieve that, and what did that process look like?
Yeah, so being a part of Forbes 30 under 30 is amazing. I mean, it has really changed, I think, some parts of my life, and the people who I've met through it. It's it's amazing. So I applied for Forbes 30 under 30. I saw the application link on the UNC website, and I at that time, and I mean, I still am, I'm trying to get additional opportunities and experience that are outside the lab bench to really make myself a well-rounded professional. And I thought, okay, if I'm on the Forbes list, maybe I can meet someone interesting. I honestly didn't really know what it all entailed because as I'm not in business, I didn't really understand that. But
Mhm.
I thought I looked at the other people's research from previous years that were on the list, and I thought, well, my research is, yeah, similar in caliber, I feel, to this, and it would be cool to meet these other people. And I submitted the application and I heard back, and I had to, of course, do the second round of interviews where I gave them my IP portfolio for them to look at, as well as grants. At that time, I had just gotten a small business grant from the NIH, which is quite difficult to get. And so I think that really stood me apart from other applicants. And I went to my first Forbes event in Abu Dhabi in March of 2023, where it was a small event and they were connecting the Forbes under 30 with women in the 50 over 50 list. And
Mhm.
that was just an amazing experience. I had no idea that there was a whole like network of events that are tied to the list, and that there's all these other lists and people interact with each other. And it's been it's been amazing, and it's so interesting to meet other young people who are also entrepreneurs, even if they're not necessarily in science, but maybe they're in tech, manufacturing, art, music, etc. And to we all share a lot of the same struggles and challenges, and to hear how people tackle it from different geographies where they're at and different resources and the different mindsets has been really it's been really enriching. And that's something that I don't get on my daily basis here in North Carolina. There's not that many other Forbes people here. I think there's one other person that I know of, but when I go to these bigger cities, New York, Boston, and San Francisco, I reach out. I'm like, hey, is there anyone on the Forbes list who wants to get a cup of coffee with me? And they're like, yeah,
Mhm.
let's do it. And we meet up and we chat and we talk, and it's really cool just to, yeah, learn about other people's experiences.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. It's interesting. One of the things I really learned from networking with people kind of a similar caliber to, regardless of industry, whether you're a scientist or an engineer or a salesperson or a finance person, I do feel, as you said, a lot of those people, they have similar challenges, they have similar drive, they have similar things they're looking to achieve in life. And when I've networked kind of with those people, I found it such an incredibly enriching thing to do. And I've heard that the Forbes list is very much a community. It's not just
Mhm.
here's a sticker and cool, good job, you've won this. Like you really build a network of like-minded people. Some of the interactions you've had with some of those people, tell me something that you've learned or that you've taken away from those conversations.
Yeah, I've learned that, especially I connect with a lot of the other young women that are on the list too. And some of the issues they felt that were related to gender and them maybe not being taken seriously as their male co-founder. And although I don't have that same effect in academia, I will say I feel that way when I'm in the business side of biotech. And so having those opportunities to voice our thoughts and our experiences has been really it's good to know you're not alone
Mhm.
on something, even if we can't figure out the solution during that time together. To feel you're not alone is really it's yeah,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
don't want to be lonely. And it can be in biotech and science world, it can get very lonely.
We interrupt this podcast for a quick 30-second introduction to Intel, the host of Her Success. Intel is a US-based staffing agency specializing in engineering and technology. We have an insatiable passion for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And part of our mission is to balance the diversity scales in our industry. We are so tied to this mission that we donate $1,000 from every underrepresented placement made to our very own nonprofit, Diversify the Future. We then use the money to fund scholarships for underrepresented groups of people to help them obtain a STEM degree. If you're an engineer or a tech professional looking for a new position, or maybe a hiring talent for this space and want a recruitment partner, please get in touch.
Yeah, I think particularly in the entrepreneurial world, I had a guest, the last guest I interviewed actually, a lady called Jennifer Lee. She's in the life science world and she's been an executive at Big Pharma, and she's also in a number of boards. One's called Women Who Invest. And one of the points that we talked about on the podcast was just how little investment goes to female-run organizations. Under 5% of the investment within small pharma biotech organizations goes to organizations that are women-led. And that's one of her real passion projects, is increasing that. And a lot of it even comes down to the scrutiny that female-led organizations are put under when they're trying to get investment. Even something as simple as the questions that they're asked by the investment firms are very different to the questions that a male-run organization are asked. So it's certainly a big challenge of the industry. So I completely see where you're coming from there. One of the things I know, I think you talked about with my colleague Laura, was the topic of age versus experience. So you clearly have achieved some great things at a relatively a young age of your career. And I know sometimes the challenges of that means that you are often maybe in a room with people that have a lot more tenure than you and have been doing it for a lot longer than you. And in your opinion, how can companies ensure they're being fair and equitable and judging people based on their experience, not just their age or their tenure and how long they've been doing the job?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question, I feel like, of course, to answer. And I think I would even make it more granular to the people in the companies. Maybe not, I don't know how a company in general can do this, but I think changing a company culture would go such a long way. And in different industries, as I've learned from being on the Forbes list, of course, being younger is a high advantage and much sought after, and that's a very big positive. And being young in biotech is not quite the case because, as you said, age a lot of times is equivalent to experience, which is equivalent to being more successful. And I'm on a Kickstart advisory board where we listen to other small companies talk and give pitches and we give feedback. And the last meeting that I was at, I was the only female in the room. I was probably the only one under the age of 40 in the room too. And I couldn't even get the guys next to me to talk to me. They wouldn't even engage in a conversation with me. Like at the end, after we give feedback to the company, and I'm asking questions, I'm giving feedback to the company. It's not like I'm just sitting there not participating. And I couldn't even get them to talk. I was asking questions, they were answering, but they weren't asking me any questions. And then they just turned away from me and had a conversation with a male colleague next to them. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to leave now because I've tried to talk to multiple people and no one's talking to me. And I have other things I can do with my time. And I left. And I understand that when you look at someone younger and you may think they don't know what they're doing or why are they here, but until you ask them a question and hear what they have to say, I don't understand how they can really judge that. And that's how I felt at that moment. It's like, if you ask me something about myself, I can tell you, and then maybe I'll gain some respect and rapport with you, even though the person on your other side, you're not even having to do that. You're probably just ready to hand them your business card and get talking with them. So I just hope that there's a way that people can look at someone who's younger and try to understand what type of new ideas they have. Maybe it's not the best idea, but it's something new and inventive. And how can that be an asset for a growing company rather than having, stuck in your way type of thinking? And of course, this is a general statement I'm making.
Sure.
Not everyone is like this, but I've experienced this enough times personally that it's unfortunate.
Yeah, and if the demographic that you represent is very underrepresented in the industry, just by extension, you're ideas, you will see things from a different perspective, right? So they should be even more valuable. I often think that the room is 80-90% one demographic. The person that comes from a different demographic possibly has, more valuable ideas simply because they will bring a different perspective, and they will represent a different opinion and a different voice at that table. And I think one of the killers to innovation is lack of diversity of thought, right? If everyone, I've been in rooms where someone says something and everyone nods and goes, "Yep, great idea." And that's just a killer for innovation, right? You need people from different perspectives that can challenge ideas and say, okay, maybe that is, but have we considered this? And things like that. And if you were to give advice to maybe a young female just starting out in the biotech world, based on some of the things that you've experienced, what advice would you give them to really make a difference in this space?
Yeah, I would give the advice of just to keep showing up, keep putting yourself in the room and making your presence known, that you're not just a bystander there for visiting the conference, that you're really there with your own ideas that people should hear and they should listen to. And of course, going about this in a polite way without looking like you can be walked over. It's a fine line to balance, especially as a female. But just, I think, continuing to show your face and show that you are resilient and you want to be there is definitely a first start to showing commitment.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I always think of some of the topics that we are trying to solve as a journey, right? The reality is the world has come a long way from a diversity perspective in 10 years and 50 years and 100 years. We still have a long way to go. But I think you really have to look at, right, how can we take steps 1, 2, and 3 here? And if we keep, as you said, showing up and fighting the good fight and doing those things over time, things will become easier. And our job is to try and accelerate that as quickly as we can. Have you ever had any mentors that you've worked with in your career? And if so, what did they teach you?
Yeah, I've had several mentors. My main mentor, who's still my mentor, Jan Liu, he is just a phenomenal scientist, an out-of-the-box thinker, and he's always treated me with a high level of respect. He was once my PhD advisor, and now we're colleagues. And the transition between the two was completely smooth. He has always respected my ideas and my hypothesis, and we have great discussions. And I think that is why when I was like that for several years in this environment where I'm interacting with my mentor, who's basically the age of my dad, but he always treated me like a colleague, and then being put into in the past few years into situations where that was not the case at all. And I'm like, what's going on? Why am I not being on the same playing field? Like I'm used to, this is what I'm used to. But so yeah, that has been a challenge. But yeah, and when I first started in his lab and he told me that his main job was to prepare me so that when an opportunity was to come my way, I was ready to take it. Like a tennis player, he said that you can move from side to side with your racket, and when that ball comes, you know exactly where to be with your racket so you can hit it and serve it back successfully. And I really feel like us working together, we've achieved that to a T. I've had other mentors as I've progressed along my career, some of which are now more biotech focused that I greatly appreciate, that are here in the triangle, and that can really, they're not really in my work per se, so they have an outsider's perspective, and that's really valuable too, is having mentors that can have an objective third party perspective and opinion on challenges you're going through, and especially having a female mentor talking about things that she's experienced, things that I should be aware of going forward in the future that I have not, thought about before.
Yeah, I always think you need to go back to your earlier point. Well, when it's very easy to transition from either someone's boss to a colleague, or as you said, PhD professor to a colleague, I thought that's normally the sign of a very good leader, someone that's humble, that's not ego-driven, and has your best interest at heart. Well, we've touched on a couple of these. Tell me about a challenge that you faced so far in your career, and if you were like, how do you feel it shaped you? And if you were to give advice to someone maybe facing a similar challenge, what advice would you give them?
So I have a very personal challenge, and I'm not sure how many other people can relate to this, but when I was in my third year PhD student, I unfortunately suffered an ischemic stroke where I lost the ability to speak temporarily and was taken to, it was like 2018 is when it was. And we had a huge snowstorm, so school was off. And thankfully, my boyfriend, who's now my husband, he had four-wheel drive and was able, as I'm mimicking to him to take me to the, miming to him to take me to the hospital, four-wheel drive was able to get me there. But when if several hours later, when I was able to start regaining my ability to speak, I didn't know where I was or what day it was, but I could start to describe to you the lab experiment that I was supposed to be doing the following day.
Oh, okay, tells you where your brain is at, yeah.
And so I thought I couldn't tell you if you had to peel a banana before you're supposed to eat it,
Mm,
but I could tell you that I was supposed to inject some animals the following day with a specific compound and observe
mhm.
their behavior. And so I don't, after that experience, I just really felt like I should really do science. I should really continue
Mhm.
on with this work. I don't necessarily believe in like a sign or anything, but if there was ever
Sure.
a
Mhm.
sign, I feel like
That
that
is it, if there
probably
ever was one.
must have been it. Of course, I understand how the brain works and how there's certain areas that were affected by a stroke and not the other, and that's what led to my
Mhm.
cognition. However, it really it drove me to really take every day for the day it is and make the most of it because you're not guaranteed tomorrow. And I
Wow.
was fortunate enough to make a full recovery several months later after intense speech therapy. But it's, yeah, even with a medical setback, having my strong mentor there that was willing to work with me to get through this every day after that. Of course, when I left the hospital the next day, the doctor said, you can go back to work as normal. And I'm like, what I do for work? I'm not sure if I should go back to work as normal. They said, no, it's okay. You can try. I'm like, okay. But he would have to check all my math and all my protocols, make sure I'm writing things correctly, doing the correct computations before I continue on with the experiments every day. My boss was doing that with me. So
Mhm.
um, I I feel that I really persevered through that experience, and it really cemented my desire to continue on in this field of glycobiology.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I mean, firstly, thank you for sharing that fantastic and personal story. It's interesting. I interview a lot of people on this podcast, and every single person has experienced something not like that, whether it's a deep personal loss or a medical challenge or something like that. And so much of, I think, the people that achieve great things in their career, they're normally inspired by something like that. The lady Jennifer that I talked about earlier, her dad died of cancer when she was very young. That really inspired her to get into the oncology field, and every single thing she's achieved in life, she can date back to that. And she was like, if that had not happened, I do not believe I would have moved. She was from South Korea. She was like, I don't believe I'd have moved to the States. I don't believe I'd have ended up doing a PhD and going on to do all these great things in the oncology world. So it's very interesting that there's always that kind of spark, I guess. You obviously work right on the cusp of innovation, and before we wrap up today, tell me something that you're really excited about for the future.
Yeah. So in our lab, we have developed a method. This is about to get a little bit technical, but this is what I'm really excited
So
about.
I'll pretend I
Um,
understand. It's okay.
we have developed a method to analyze cell surface sugars. So actually, every cell in your body is coated with sugars. And we are interested to learn how these profile of sugars coating your cell changes over the course of various diseases, cancer, sepsis, Alzheimer's disease, etc. And we're hoping that we can learn that maybe we can pair up the changes of the profile of the sugar on the surface to the prognosis of a disease, and maybe we could predict disease outcome by looking at a specific signature. And then with that, because we can synthesize the compounds ourselves, maybe we can understand that if you're depleted in a certain type of sugar on your cell surface, and that depletion gets worse and worse over time as your disease gets worse and worse, maybe we can give that sugar that's being depleted now as a therapeutic, as a way to restore something that has been lost, that was playing an essential role for cell health. And by giving us a therapeutic, maybe we can turn back some of those symptoms. So that's something that I really am looking forward to, is having a continued deep understanding of glycobiology as it relates to disease progression and all types of diseases, whether it's acute disease or chronic disease and oncology. And then after having understanding, is now we have the tools to do something about it. So it's an exciting time in glycobiology and glycoscience. So stay tuned for more.
Oh, I certainly will. Well, that's amazing. Thank you. I think I understood most of what you just said. I was paying very, very close attention. But thank you. Yeah, I mean, that sounds like some fantastic work, and I'll certainly be watching on the sidelines. But that's all we have time for today. I mean, firstly, Katelyn, thank you so much. That was a really, really interesting discussion. I feel we covered a number of different topics. I would say, as always, for anyone listening, the LinkedIn profile will be in the notes. I'm sure she won't object if anyone wants to reach out to her or network with her. But Katelyn, thank you so much for your time. I thought this was a fantastic episode.
Well, thank you so much. And of course, I welcome anyone to have a further discussion with, and I hope that this resonates with your listeners as well. It was just amazing to talk with you this afternoon, Chris.
So thanks. I'm sure it will.
Thank you so much for listening to today's Her Success podcast, brought to you by Intel. We hope you found it inspiring and insightful. For more conversations with inspirational women, why not check out our interviews from season 1? If you enjoy the podcast, please take a moment to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us grow and reach more listeners who can benefit from these empowering conversations. Don't forget to connect with us on LinkedIn at Her Success, and follow us on Instagram at Her Success Community for a daily dose of inspiration. Want even more Her Success in your life? Sign up for our newsletter on our website to receive exclusive information on future episodes, blogs by our amazing guests, special features, upcoming events, and much more. Thank you for being a part of Her Success Community. Stay tuned for our next episode in 2 weeks' time.